Hey y'all, this is episode 4 or 5, can't remember which, of this conversation that the Lord is having me doing about the cross section between mental health and things of the spirit. I just have to say that when I started out doing this, I had no idea what God was going to do with this, and I'm just really in awe of how He has continued to show up with giving me something to say each day. Monday at like 8 p.m., 9 p.m., I'm like, do you have something for me? Because if not, I'm not going to be able to say anything. So I just find that really interesting. But today we're going to be talking about healing. And I'm going to try and get through this quickly because I have some data issues that keep happening. Pray for me, y'all. But we're going to be talking about healing today. And I'm obviously talking about this from like an emotional and mental perspective, but if there's physical healing needed, this might help you as well. Take it back to the Lord. Take all the words I say back to the Lord always. So, if you watched last week's video or any of the other videos, I allude to the fact that injury, emotional, mental, all that, is the price we pay for the world that we live in. A sin-filled world. Wherever there is a sin, or the effects of that will be that it will cause harm to other people. I've come to realize this recently, that your sins don't just affect you, or as the Lord kind of showed it to me, you will feel the effects or the weight of a sin, even if you don't understand that that's what it is, even if you don't acknowledge the things of God and you're like, sin, what's that? Now, you've experienced the effects of it, whether you realize it or not. So this is really, really important stuff that we need to understand and discuss. Last week, I believe it was, I talked about healing and some components from healing, and that it's maturity and freedom. Where there is healing, there has to be maturity, and there will be maturity, true healing. And where there is healing, there will also be freedom. And where there's freedom, there will be healing. So those are like what goes along with healing, kind of some of the effects of it. This is going to be about the 3 steps to tell how to walk in healing, and how to tell if you actually are healed. Because a lot of us, unfortunately, we're healed maybe 70%, but not 100%. And if you're healed 70%, you're not truly healed. You're not truly walking in freedom. So we have to understand this. So, number 1 is acknowledgement. Acknowledgement. Don't ask me why I wrote it. I just did. I feel like that's just the vibe. So acknowledgement, they say, it's a common saying, especially with people who've gone through addiction and stuff. The first step to recovery is admitting you have a problem. And this is really, really good and important and obvious. If you can't admit, don't see, whatever, that you have a problem, there is no room for any sort of healing, any sort of growth, whatever. Obviously. Now, the issue with this from a worldly perspective is that the things of the spirit just aren't considered. So whenever we do with healing, we're dealing with the symptoms of something after the fact. One thing that we have as kind of a safeguard as Christians is that if we really understand that verse that says the heart is deceitful and desperately wicked, that calls us to take captive every thought that we have and make it subject to Christ. The fact that we know that, we're all sinners, if we understand this and we operate from that understanding, we can safeguard ourselves with not injuring others. And also when people injure us, we can see it through that lens, and it's not so personal. It's more of like, okay, this is like in Ephesians 6, this is a spiritual battle. My battle is not against flesh and blood. And it can help us. But acknowledgement, if you have just partial acknowledgement, healing has not been made perfected in you. And that's a problem. Many people actually can operate from a place of thinking they're healed and be so actually become worse, actually become more of an issue, more of a problem for other people. So it has to be made full. When I talked about this in the last video, people say stuff like, I don't need to talk about my problems. That's stuff from a past generation. But there are people who still carry that kind of mentality. And of course, there are people even within the young generation who may take that mentality. Not everything, we need to understand that feelings can lie to you. You have to keep your feelings subject to something, really to God. That's how it should be. But you can't just be feeling things and making decisions off of those feelings. You'll be irrational. And we're kind of starting to like go into that territory, to be honest, some of the stuff that I see. But we can't just shut down feelings. That's just not how it works. And as I said, I believe in my last video, anyone who says something like that, I guarantee you they don't have that maturity. They lack that. They lack freedom. There's some bitterness. They probably have an issue with anger. There's no such thing as like, we don't talk about our feelings. It's just not a thing. It's fundamentally how do I say this? It's not how we're designed. So it's fundamentally coming from a place of ignorance, because it's not a part of our psyche. It is a part of our psyche to have feelings. And that's how we make sense of things a lot of times. So that needs to be understood. Acknowledgement. And acknowledgement has to be deeper than just the here and the now. For me, with the healing that I've talked about, like some of the issues that I've had recently, that the Lord is currently healing me with issues with my parents and stuff. And it's different with my mom and with my dad, even though it's the same exact issue. It's like emotional maturity and availability and all that comfort not present. With my dad, it's one thing, and with my mom, it's different. Like it's manifested differently. Now, if I stopped with just the here and the now and how I feel and how it hurt, well, let me first say that was a good thing that I even realized because of my realization that there was something wrong. Now I realize I can heal, and I don't want to continue in this pattern. So it took me a while to even get to that place, because if that's all I've grown up with, that's all I know, But the acknowledgement that there is something wrong here is a really, really powerful thing. But you can't stay in that place, and it can't just be from a place of this natural, what we're seeing in the here and the now. There has to be an understanding that, oh, that person's hurting too. Watch my last video if you want more information on that. But it's a wound. The wounds that I'm dealing with are stuff that my mom has dealt with her mom, with the people who raised her, whatever the case is, and etc. So acknowledgement, first and foremost, has to happen. It has to happen on a level deeper than what you can see. So the best way in which you'll be able to handle that would be just to submit it to the Lord and say, Lord, I am hurting in this area. Make this make sense for me. Show me what's going on here from your perspective. Yeah. So number 2 is one word we like to say a lot as Christians, but I don't think we fully understand what it means. Deliverance. Deliverance is number 2. And whoa. So this is the worldly version of deliverance would be healing. Okay, you've acknowledged your hurt. Now we're into healing. And acknowledgement and deliverance kind of go hand in hand with them. It's like, okay, now you have, because the worldly perspective is like, that person hurt you. That's the problem. Now, of course, there are people more mature than that. And it's like, there's something deeper here. But for most of us, it's like, no, that's the problem. You're the problem. The Holy Spirit has shown me, and I've mentioned this before, that most things are 2 ways. Very few things are one-sided. Extreme cases, someone just like comes up to you and like slaps you, like, yeah, that's on them. But most things, when we get frustrated with people in our daily life, let me tell you something. There might be someone here who's frustrated. It's like, my husband just won't, my wife just won't, blah, blah, blah. Maybe there's a perspective issue that you're missing. I've seen it happen, well, even with myself, where it's like, I can't think of an example off the top of, well, actually, no, yeah, an example would be like, I wanted to cook. I'm like, I need to learn how to cook. I'm 20 plus years old. I need to know how to cook. I need to have that available to me more. And it's not that I can't, but it's just not as much as I would like, I would say. And that's a whole thing. But instead of me being frustrated that it's like, this is the situation, whatever, like, you just blah, 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 blah. So controlling, all this stuff, whatever. There could be truth to that. Let's take it back a step. I have food to eat. I have someone who is willing, someone who loves me, who is willing to cook for me. There could be other considerations there, but when I realized that from a perspective of this really is not that big of a deal, like, I'm thinking about like, how am I going to learn to cook? I can learn to cook. Okay. I'll fail and I'll succeed, and that's fine. I can learn to cook. Like, there's no, it'd be nice. It'd be the thing that should happen. But you know what? Am I going to focus on that or the fact that I have food? And that's not to say that my frustration wasn't legitimate. It was, especially if I've said this, before. But that's a whole deeper thing that I'm not going to get into, at least not right here and right now. But that I remember having that like perspective shift. When the Holy Spirit first gave me that conviction, I was reading something, and it was someone talking about marriage and how she was so frustrated with her husband over this and that, and he does this, doesn't do that, all this stuff. And that's when the Holy Spirit gave her that conviction. And at the same time, like, I felt it too. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's me too. But it was just that, instead of being frustrated, you can work on your patience. Instead of being frustrated, you can work on grace. Instead of being frustrated, you can work on walking in the love that the Lord has for us. And I guarantee you, your problems will not seem like problems when you really like walk in that. Your problems will seriously diminish. I'll put it that way. So number 2 is deliverance. And just in case you needed that visual. But deliverance, we talk about that. And what does that look like and what does that mean? Well, it can mean, it typically means this is where this spiritual component really is understood in the church. That what leads us to being so hurt and all this stuff is the sin aspect of things. So, uh, some of us have some spirits that have caused us to walk in bitterness and unforgiveness. If you're walking in unforgiveness, like I am not going to forgive that person after what they did to me, you're bound. And wherever there is binding, wherever there is really a lack of freedom, there's a spiritual component. And you might literally need to be delivered from a spirit. And there's self-deliverance too, by the way, if you don't know. But yeah, you might need to be delivered from a spirit. Some of us just need to be delivered from our own mind. It just depends on where you're at, from our own soul. Some of it is actually a spirit afflicting us. Some of it is just us. So after the acknowledgement, after saying, okay, I see this fully as, here's this wound, you know, this is how it's affecting me, whatever, this can't continue. Now I need to be delivered from the things that brought me to that place, the things that had me stay in that place for a while and be bound in that place, be in delusion, be in deception, all that kind of stuff. Now, the worldly version of that would just be like, okay, like, let's unpack, like, what led you there. I'm thinking about this scenario. Sorry, I'm kind of giving scenarios all over the place. Um, but this is important here, where I had a friend who, um, she had gone through like some religious hurt, psychosis, however you want to say it, spiritual psychosis. And she was hurting from it, understood, valid, whatever. And she considered, well, it's this and it's that, this aspect of myself. But what wasn't considered, obviously, was the spiritual and what came along with her being in that deception. So much so that when I started speaking about spiritual things to her, it was the same thing. To her, she like took it upon herself to tell me, like, well, this is probably what the situation is. This is how I see it, and this is what the situation is. And I'm like, I'm gonna have to stop you right there. Like, the way in which the Lord has showed up for me in my life has been the pattern of my life. You can't like undo all of my life just because you were in deception and then you realized it and came out of it. And that's speaking from a place of being unhealed. And we'll see that in the last point, but I'll get into that in a minute. So deliverance means that once again, you have to consider all the different angles. Now, the difference is there's acknowledgement of just realizing it, and then the deliverance is the actual work involved with it. Wherever there has been a deception, a delusion, a hurt, whatever, a sin, whatever, there is a whole lot of baggage that comes along with it. And let me try and think of an example actually that might do better with that. So for instance, going back to the thing with my mom and my dad, really is the emotional availability. First, I had to realize the acknowledgement, this is an issue. Next, I had to be delivered. I had to be delivered from the idea that they were right and I was wrong, and all the things that went along with me thinking they were right, I was wrong. The self-esteem issues, the inability to have faith in myself. I guess that's self-esteem issues, but like all the stuff that went along with it. I had to like undo that. I had to realize, no, that was coming from a broken place in the first place. I had to realize, oh my gosh, I'm repeating the pattern. No, no, no. I'm not going to like get into in like have like for instance like a disagreement with someone and then start saying the same things that have been said to me. No, we're stopping that right here and right now. Some of you, your deliverance is going to be by your own hand. And the Lord has given you that power in His name, through His name. You have to tell those entities that have bothered you with anger, with pride, with unforgiveness. You need to say, look, spirit of unforgiveness, that's not a thing, by the way. Sometimes when we say spirit of, we mean like the disposition of your spirit. Or really, I guess, of your soul. I don't know how that works. One of those. But one of those things, I don't know. But it's not an actual entity, is what I'm trying to say. So, you have to say, I am not leaving this spot until anger is uprooted out of me. It says this in the word. It says that you have to war over yourself. That sounded kind of weird, but you have to war for yourself. There we go. That sounds a little bit better. So deliverance is super integral. And it doesn't look like just sheer acknowledgement. And I think that's where the world really gets it wrong. And also us as believers too. We kind of like, the acknowledgement is where it almost begins and ends. But nope, you have to understand what happened. Understand there's been a hurt here. Understand that there needs to be a freedom so that you don't project and continue this on. Understand where, while there was one thing done to you, a whole bunch of other things came along with it. When there is one sin, there is room for other sins. Whenever there's an unclean spirit, I don't know why I said that. Unclean spirits give way to spirits to be able to inhabit your life. Still don't know why I said that, but it's true. Just take that, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, it's, if you have one, you have multiple. There's no such thing as it just being that one little offense. So like the example with my friend, she had like whatever issues she thought of, but there was also the unsound mind in which now she believed that she was kind of this, almost this expert on things of the spirit. And I'm like, wait a minute, you just said that you're not even spiritual, you don't even understand this stuff, and now you're trying to humble yourself. Pride is actually our biggest offender, both of other people and of ourselves, because we will be in pride and cause injury unto others, unto ourselves, and not even realize it's the pride behind it. It's not even what you're upset about, whatever, was said or not said, whatever. It's actually the fact that you have pride. So for instance, someone frustrates you, someone says something frustrating, and we're going to say in this scenario, it's kind of arbitrary, it really, like, you could let it go. But in your pride, you say, okay, no, like, you need to understand that you're wrong, or something like that. Now you're starting to create a problem that actually isn't the problem. And it's because of your pride. It's not because of the actual issue. That happened to me the other day. I do not recommend slipping into carnality for those of you who are walking in the spirit. It's no, 0 out of 10 would not recommend, but I was just feeling a little bit petty. And there was a joke that was said that I found funny and this other person didn't, and they took it upon themselves to tell me why I was wrong about how I thought it was funny. Now, it wasn't like super, at least to me, it wasn't offensive or anything like that. It wasn't like advocating for anyone being harmed or anything. But you know, they'd said that, and I'm like, okay, like, that's how you see it, and that's how I see it, and that's fine. But they were not okay with that. They kept coming back and saying, like, no, like, you need to understand, like, blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, okay, the person who said it as a joke. I get that it might not be everyone's humor, but that's the beauty in humor. Like, you know, it's each person. So I was like so baffled by how like frustrated she was that I couldn't see it from her perspective. This is the number one thing that will kill us all. And when I say kill us all, I mean like in our spirit. Pride comes before the fall. We, this pride, I've talked about this so much, but pride is the affliction of mankind. There is no, if you need proof of sin, pride. There is no way in which we can't look at things from our perspective, from a self-serving perspective, at least first in most cases. That in of itself is pride, and it's not wrong in of itself either. We can't help it. We literally cannot help it. It's the way in which we're designed. We're not gods in which we can consider, you know, multiple things from multiple angles all in one go. It doesn't work like that. So pride is just the confines of our natural mind. This is why we need to be subject to the things of the Lord, because we naturally have pride. We naturally have that sin just worked into the formula, okay? That's just how it works. And yeah, anyways. So deliverance needs to happen where you have to understand all these things. You have to unpack all these things. You have to recognize that there's more than just whatever met the eye as far as your hurting goes. There's more than just whatever is on the surface level. If it was allowed to continue for a while, there's a lie that you believe. This is true for people who are in deception. This is true for people who are in psychosis. This is true for, there's a lie that you believe. And you might stop and say, well, I thought the situation was this. I thought God was going to come through. I thought he told me blah, blah, blah. That's the lie, in my opinion. And now that I've come out of that, now I'm bitter. Now I hate God. No, no, no. The lie was something even deeper than that. The lie was you didn't think God had a plan for you. You didn't think he loved you. You didn't think he cared about you. You didn't think he saw you. That's the lie. That's actually the lie. It's not what happened afterwards. That's a symptom of it. That's a symptom of the lie. And so this leads me into the third point. Actually, let me not yap anymore, but this leads me into the third point. And this is where we can really get cooking. The third point is healing/freedom. So when you have been delivered, there's a verse I can't recall the, you know me. I am not good at references, but I believe it's in Matthew. And it talks about, oh, maybe that's why I said the thing about the unclean spirit. I was too far ahead, but unclean spirit being cast out of the man or cast away from the man or however that works. I'm not sure. But then, you know, it goes and the dude is clean. He's delivered from whatever happened. He's good, right? Right? No. 7 more spirits evil than himself that unclean spirit grabs and says, we're going to go back. Let's party it up, y'all. You can't just be set free by deliverance and think that that's good. No, there's still additional work that has to take place. Now the healing can actually begin. Prior to that, that wasn't healing. This is where the world gets it wrong. Acknowledgement, not healing. Deliverance, not healing. It's an aspect of healing. Okay? It's integral. Like you can't have healing without it, but it is not the healing. Now you can actually walk in freedom and healing with this third aspect of healing. After you have come to know what has hurt you, what has wounded you, you have to bring it back to the Lord. It says, take captive every thought and make it submissive to the things of Christ. To Christ. I don't know why I said things of Christ. To Christ. You have to do this when it comes to healing. Because what ended up happening, the seven spirits came back to that man and they made his situation worse. I alluded to this earlier, but what will end up happening if you are delivered to a degree, but not fully? What will end up happening is you will then become bitter. If it was, again, if it was like a church hurt, bitter towards the church. If it's spiritual psychosis, bitter towards God. If it's someone did something to you, bitter towards that person. You can't walk in forgiveness. That is not freedom. That is not healing. This is why even people in the world will say something like, you forgive for yourself. It's not even for that other person. It's for you. And it is. You should also for that other person, because if God forgave you despite all that you do, you should forgive that other person. But it's for you too. And you're going to actually feel the effects of that more than the other person will, to be honest. Because some people, unfortunately, they just don't care what they do. They just don't. But the healing and the freedom, this looks like you taking it back to the Lord and saying, Lord, correct this in me. Search my heart. Make sure there is no root of bitterness, no root of resentment. And if there is, root it out of me. So the deliverance is like part one of that. And the healing is like the sealing of the envelope, if you want to say it like that, you know. If you've already been freed from whatever spirit has ailed you and whatever deception you had, you know, I thought this. I thought, there have been times when I thought that God would come through in a situation, and he did it because it wasn't his will. And that's real. And there's times when he has come through, even when I wasn't even asking. And to be honest, earlier, I used to have a really hard time with it because I'm like, well, how could you? I needed you, blah, 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 because I saw that as the problem. And I also saw, I didn't understand. No, he sees what the actual problem is and he has a plan. I couldn't trust him on that level. So it would cause me to be upset or confused or just harbor these negative emotions that, you know, weren't great, really weren't great. So I needed a healing. You know, what healing would look like would be, maybe I'm not fully, how do I say this? Maybe I am not, maybe I've just been delivered and there's still hurt there, but I trust you that you're going to turn this situation around. That's actually what I told the Lord as far as like this parental thing, that, you know, he told me he's working on this situation and I see that. But that doesn't mean that the hurt is gone. The hurt is still there. It's definitely still there with parent number one. So I'm like, I trust you. Keep me right, Lord. Keep me right. Keep me healed. Keep me. I think I kind of mentioned this a little bit with the deliverance thing and I went ahead of myself. But with the healing, that's where it's like, okay, I'm putting this in your hands, Lord. And so if you're in the world and you don't acknowledge this, you're never, I would argue you might not fully be healed. Maybe not in every situation, because there are some really, really mature people who understand these principles even without even being a Christian. They're just that deep. But it'll be a whole lot quicker. The Lord will get the glory, and it is a different thing when the Lord gets to doing heart surgery on you. Let me tell you something. But yeah, I know that there are some really profound people who kind of understand these truths even though they don't believe. But the proof that you haven't been healed is that you still carry a bitterness. You still carry this idea that, your situation is like mine. Well, now wait a minute. That's like hardly ever the case, if we're being honest. That's a lack of a sound mind. You should watch that video. I think it was my first one. And we see this actually a lot when people go through like some trauma or something like that, and they say, oh, man, like, this just happened to me. Oh my gosh, man, that happened to me too. I had to heal. It took me like 3 years to heal from that. It's gonna take you a while. Like, oh, hold up. Don't be wishing that on me. I'm sorry. No, I know that it's coming from they're trying to help, but it's a little bit misguided, but they're trying to help. But it's like, no, if your process took 3 years, God bless you. But please, I know myself, okay, I'm not confused about that. If I'm telling you 3 months after that I'm healed, I might not have full healing, but our processes don't look the same, and they don't have to. When you have God, He gets to working. Let me tell you something. He will not let you just sit there. Let any stone be unturned, and it is a journey. He started healing me with this emotional thing with my parents. He started, what month are we in? September. He started, maybe it was, no, last month. And it's funny because I almost missed it. Even I knew he communicated it to me by my spirit, and he just said, I'm working on her. And I actually, if I hadn't been sensitive enough, I would still be bound. This is where I knew like healing still needed to take place in me. I had gotten to a level where I wasn't as mad, I wasn't as frustrated, whatever the case was, but I was still bound in that. I couldn't see that he was trying to do a new thing. I couldn't see that he was bringing a calm or a peace within my house where it's like, oh, I'm actually still frustrated about stuff that happened in the past. This is not the current. I would take the past and I would relate it to the current, and it would keep me like going like this. I would be bound. So, I hope this makes sense. I hope that I made the distinctions clear for you. If I didn't, I apologize. I know it kind of sounds almost very similar from acknowledgement to deliverance to healing, but I hope that there was an understanding that that last part is so crucial, because I see it a lot. People, especially in the church, they might be delivered from a sin, and it's like, oh my gosh, how could you be doing blah blah blah? Like, don't you know it's a sin? It's like, you hypocrite, you Pharisee, like you were just there. And I myself, the Holy Spirit has had to keep me from wanting to get upset about stuff that it's like, how can you be upset with that person? That's a really common thing that happens, where people will be delivered and then they'll get like angry and agitated and irritated with people who haven't gotten to that place. That's a problem. I see this all the time. And it doesn't have to be a religious thing. I see this with like social political ideology and all that kind of stuff, where people believed one thing and then they came out of it. And it's like, those fools who believe that, blah, blah. It's like, but yesterday you were literally on their side. Okay. So now you've invited pride in because now you think, well, I'm in a position above you. No, no, no. We're all healing from something, okay? We just are. That's just how it is. So if bitterness or a controlling kind of attitude is taken over, where, you're like, this is how it looks, this is how healing looks, this is how the situation is, in the situation with me and my friend, it's like, there is no possible other outcome here because this is how I see it. And to be fair, I think that she was saying from her perspective, this is how she sees it. But I told her from the beginning that, like, you know, I don't want to go into the details about it, but I told her that, you know, initially, like, yeah, I don't, it's too confusing, but, there is a lot of unforgiveness that people are carrying, that they say, well, this was done to me, so, and they're in bitterness. They might say that they're forgiven, but then as soon as that person's name comes up, oh, they're fuming. That's a problem. You are not healed. You are not delivered if you are operating like that. Now, one interesting thing, feel free to comment on this. If you are healing, there can still be hurt there. This is something that I've asked the Lord to really make sense for me. There can still be hurt there, and that doesn't mean that you aren't that doesn't mean that you haven't forgiven someone just because there's still hurt there. But I'd love to hear some other perspectives on that. um but of course, like, once you're really fully healed, that won't be an issue. um so if you still have bitterness, if you still have resentment, if even if, like, it's good 9 times out of 10, but then, okay, something just reminded me of that person or that situation or something, and I'm ready to go, like, reel it in. Take a step back. There is some healing that you have not considered that needs to take place on a much deeper level, and that's spiritual. um yeah, I think that's it. Sorry, I had to, like, think if there was anything else that God wanted me to say. Nothing else comes to mind. So Jesus loves y'all, and I hope that this helps someone. If anything I said wasn't clear or anything, please do let me know. Like this video if it helped you, comment, let me know your thoughts. By the way, if I haven't made it clear, I know I said this in the, like, I think the first episode, but I'm not an expert on psychology stuff or anything like that. I don't claim to be. I'm speaking of it from a spiritual perspective and staying in the lane that I know, and that's it. Um, oh, I did. Sorry. I did want to share really quickly that healing. So, with my mom and with my dad, even though it's the same kind of offense and the same issue, the same root issue, it's manifested differently. And with my dad, the healing, I actually believe that I'm healed from that. I mean, time will tell, if we start really communicating again, we'll tell. But really, I mean, what I feel led to do when I think about my dad, instead of being angry, instead of being frustrated, instead of being all this stuff, even feeling hurt. Now, to be fair, we're not, like, actively communicating, so that could be a factor. But I just feel really led to pray for him. And that's one of the signs that It's one of the signs that the Lord has really moved, done a move in you. I feel led to pray for him. I feel led to intercede for him. I feel like almost a sadness or a burden, actually, that it's just like, because now I see it from a perspective of, you were wounded. What you're giving me is a product of the wounds that you have. I have grace for that. Let me love you, you know? So, you know, in the situation there is kind of a little bit different because we're, I don't know if he's a believer or not. So pray for my dad. But, he, and I don't know how to explain it. We just don't really have much to connect with anyways, like not in like a negative, like not in like a bitter way or anything like that, but just, or a product of hurt. We just are two like socially just very different people, I guess. And it's just like, it's difficult, like, you know, and it's become increasingly more difficult the older I've gotten. As a kid, it was different because they could just give me a toy and it's like, I'm good. But then like after that, it's just been really like, ugh. So anyways, but no, I just feel that overwhelming need to pray, and that is what, like, I believe, no, that is the proof of the Lord. Because I wouldn't, if someone's hurt you, it's just like, okay, like, even if I'm not mad, like, you can be over there. But now it's like, no, I want to like pray over him and intercede on his behalf. Like, it's a genuine need and desire. And it comes from a place of love and concern. And with my mom, the thing is that we I'm in the process of healing. I don't feel angry. I don't feel, the only anger I feel is towards the spirits that have afflicted her and afflicted me and afflicted my family. And you probably felt that. You probably heard that, but yeah, in my voice. But no, I don't feel that anger towards her. I feel kind of like, yeah, I get it. Product of how you were raised, the time you were raised, the location you were raised, all this stuff. And I want to give that. Now it's a little more complicated. I'm not fully there and there is still hurt. But as far as forgiveness, I would like to say that, you know, I can communicate with her. Like, I would like to say that it's there. But full healing in that situation, not so much. With my dad, more so. And I'm sharing that maybe so you can reflect and see where you're at as far as healing goes and how it can look different and different considerations to take. That's the only reason why I'm sharing that. But anyways, I'm gonna stop yapping. God bless you. I will see you next time. Bye.